Bryce Young has officially entered the most dangerous stage of every NFL quarterback's career.
I am what I am. What I'm not, see, I never beat.
Not the rookie season, not the season where he got benched or where everybody blames the offensive line. I'm talking about the year where people stop grading your potential and start grading your results. Because Bryce has survived the chaos, he survived the coaching changes, he survived the terrible beginning, he survived being labeled a bust even before he started to learn the playbook. And most importantly, he responded. But now, the patience meter is running low. Carolina has invested too much, Bryce has played too many games, and the conversation is he Carolina's franchise quarterback? This is not a Bryce Young hate video. This is not a Bryce Young's already a bust video. This is a fair evaluation of a quarterback who's already improved, but now has to prove that that improvement is leading somewhere. Because this is officially Bryce Young's put up or shut up year. Let's begin with the part that people sometimes like to pretend doesn't matter. Bryce Young was the #1 overall pick. That title alone comes with a different level of pressure. When you get drafted in the 4th round, people ask, can you eventually become the starter? When you get drafted 1st overall, nobody introduces you as a project. You are expected to be the change. You are expected to be the solution. Your jersey goes on sale, all that. The franchise starts talking about playoff runs. The fan base, they get excited talking about playoff runs. And somebody in the front office is probably already updating their resume just in case this thing goes wrong. This is the #1 pick experience. You're not getting drafted to be a quarterback. You're being drafted to change the culture of the franchise. And Carolina didn't just select Bryce. They traded up to get him. That means that every quarterback selected after him becomes a part of the conversation. Every CJ Stroud touchdown became a whole nother argument. And every time Bryce struggled, the question wasn't, did Bryce have a bad game? That question was, did Carolina pick the wrong quarterback? That may not always be fair, but when you're the #1 overall pick, fair does not mean anything when it comes to production. You are expected to be the reason that the franchise improves. You are expected to become the reason that the franchise improves, not another person waiting for the franchise to improve first. Now, Carolina absolutely deserves blame for Bryce's disastrous start. Let's not rewrite history here. The Panthers were unstable, the offensive line was messy, the front office was messy, protection was unreliable, the receiving group wasn't scaring anybody. Defensive coordinators were not sitting up at night talking about, how do we stop the Panthers' passing attack? Bryce being selected #1 overall, he was brought in to bring structure. He was probably looking for structure, but instead what he found was confusion. The environment matters because quarterbacks are affected by coaching. They are affected by protection, and they are also affected by the talent that they have around them. They are affected by whether the organization knows what it's doing. And for a long time, Carolina did not look like they knew what they were doing. But with all that said, Bryce Young has to be a part of the solution. He has to be. A franchise quarterback cannot spend his career waiting for perfect circumstances to happen. You were brought in to be the change. You were selected 1 overall. At some point, he's got to calm the organization. At some point, he's got to raise the level of the talent that's around him. At some point, the Panthers should look more stable because he's on the field. That is the standard. And this, honestly, is where Bryce deserves real credit because that benching could have broken him. Think about how quickly the conversation around him changed. He went from being the 1st overall pick to being somebody that the Carolina Panthers could have potentially ruined. Confidence looked shaken, the offense looked uncomfortable, and every mistake seemed to confirm what the critics already believed about him. But Bryce responded. A lot of quarterbacks look talented with everything going like it's supposed to go, but you learn a lot more about a quarterback when everything starts to fall apart around them. Bryce had to sit, Bryce had to watch, Bryce had to deal with that embarrassment. Instead of disappearing, he returned with a better command, a better presence, a better mindset. That alone did not make him a franchise quarterback, but that mentality showed that he definitely can become one. This story is not that Bryce Young failed. And that gives Carolina Panthers fans a reason to keep believing. In the 2024 season, Bryce finished with 2,403 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. His confidence had been tested, his future had been debated. And still, Carolina didn't know exactly what they had. None of us knew what he was. Then came 2025. Bryce started 16 games. He threw for 3,011 yards. He threw 23 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Not imaginary improvement, not off-season improvement, not all-season hype. That was improvement. Now, don't get me wrong, those are not superstar numbers. By any stretch of the imagination are those superstar numbers. And that's exactly why this season matters. Bryce has done enough to continue the experiment, but now he has to prove that the experiment worked. In Carolina, the fans, they don't need somebody tweeting, oh, Bryce looks different this year. They don't need slow motion pictures of him walking in the stadium. They don't need highlight clips of Bryce. They don't need somebody saying Bryce looks different, because everybody looks different in July. Everybody looks good when the defense is laid back like a lawn chair. And yes, we know the size thing with Bryce. We know he is not the biggest quarterback in the league. The question isn't whether Bryce can grow 4 inches. Can he play well enough to make those 4 inches irrelevant? Now, this is where the evaluation gets interesting. Because right now, Bryce is standing on the edge of 2 categories: franchise quarterback or game manager. A game manager can keep an offense on schedule. He can complete short, intermediate passes, and he can protect the football. He can win when the running game works. He can execute the calls that are called and the calls that are made by the coach. And when the defense plays well and the line holds up, game managers do very well. Absolutely, there is nothing wrong with being a game manager. Nothing wrong with it. But when you get drafted first overall, the expectations are a little bit higher and they're a little bit different. Why are they different? Because the franchise quarterback standard is different. He elevates his teammates. He performs in late situations. He wins games when the circumstances aren't perfect. And he makes the organization feel good in their decision. The front office does not spend every season researching quarterbacks. The coaching staff does not have to build an offense designed to hide him. The fan base isn't debating his future after every bad performance that he has. The organization will just know, this guy is our quarterback. But Bryce is not quite there yet. He has shown the intelligence and the ability to operate within the system and to operate the system. He's shown flashes of late game confidence. He's shown resiliency. But has he consistently elevated the offense? Has he reached a point where Carolina is winning because of him instead of just with him? The Panthers can't survive forever by asking him to lead 14-play drives and 7-yard passes every time they need for him to dig them out of trouble. Long drives look beautiful when they work, but a holding penalty will stop that in its tracks. One sack can put the offense behind schedule. Explosive plays create margin for error. They force safeties to back up. They create space for a running game. They allow the offense to score without being perfect. Every quarterback has a bad game. Hell, every Sunday is an elite quarterback that's having a bad game. That's just the nature of the beast of the NFL. But franchise quarterbacks do not always look like it's a question of whether they are the franchise guy or they're taking a step backwards. He must control late game situations consistently. That's why his consistency has to improve. Late game situations, 3rd downs, 4th downs, 3rd and 3, 4th and 2. These are late game situations that a franchise quarterback just has to be able to manage. He was drafted for this purpose. Can you make the throw when the defense knows exactly what's coming? Because these are the moments that elevate and show you who a franchise quarterback is or who a franchise quarterback isn't. Yes, the offensive line matters. Yes, the receiver matters. Yes, the coaching matters. But the NFL's not perfect week to week. Sometimes that wide receiver doesn't get open. Sometimes the line doesn't block it. Sometimes the pass rusher beats the offensive lineman. Sometimes the coaching is not where it's supposed to be. A franchise quarterback has to figure out a way to survive those moments. Eventually, the circumstances cannot remain the main character in Bryce's story. Bryce has to become the main character. All right, let's just fair excuses or expired excuses. Was Carolina a mess? Yes. Did he deserve patience? Without question. But patience isn't a permanent contract. There's a difference between explaining a quarterback's struggles and always having an excuse for his struggles. The bad environment explains the beginning. It cannot explain the career. He has to overcome the bad call. He has to overcome that 3rd down. He has to make that difficult throw and create something when that play breaks down. And he has to provide enough production that the conversation changes around him. Right now, the argument for Bryce is much of what Carolina is still doing. This season, the argument needs to begin with what Bryce is doing right. When you compare Bryce's third-year stats with other number one picks at his position, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, all these guys, when you compare that, Joe Burrow produced like an elite quarterback. Even Jared Goff had a winning team. Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, at first, Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield produced in their third seasons. Both of them did. That don't mean Bryce has to absolutely copy their elite numbers. Every quarterback develops differently. Every roster's different. Every coaching situation is different. But by the end of that third season, the franchise should absolutely have a picture of what their quarterback is. Bryce's 2025 showed growth, but the franchise number one overall pick, that standard is different. Bryce just has to prove that Carolina can build something sustainable around him. The question is no longer, has he improved? He has. The question now is, will the improvement last long enough to justify the investment? Realistically, there are three outcomes. Outcome number one, Bryce breaks out. Franchise, the guys are getting open. He elevates the offense. That 3rd and 3 becomes manageable. He starts clicking as a franchise guy. That's one outcome. And in that outcome, nobody's debating whether Bryce Young is a franchise quarterback or not. That conversation is put to bed at that point. Outcome number two, he's adequate. He's enough. He plays well enough to keep the team competitive. He can score. He can not make those critical mistakes. He can still convert those third downs. And the Panthers still can win. But loses some close games. He has some disappointing performances in games. The Panthers can win with him like that and avoid replacing him immediately, but not enough to feel confident. And because of that, this can possibly be the most dangerous outcome. Why could it be the most dangerous outcome? Because elite quarterback play don't give you those questions. Average quarterback meaning, is this really the guy we want? Do we really have confidence in him? Can we believe in him? Can he get the job done? You leave that question in the air. That middle ground alone can set a franchise back 5, 6, 7, even 10 years. And outcome number three, he just absolutely shits the bed. He regresses, he gets worse. They've invested all this money in this line. They've gone and got him these receivers, and he absolutely just does not perform. Now, that wouldn't end his career. All kind of talented quarterbacks get second chances. The Super Bowl champion got a second, a third, and a fourth chance. But his opportunity to become the face of the Carolina Panthers in this outcome could potentially be over. The question isn't whether Bryce belongs somewhere else in the NFL. The question is, does he belong on the Panthers? My verdict, Bryce has earned this opportunity. He survived a disastrous beginning. He survived failure. He survived getting benched. He bounced back. He showed resiliency. He responded. He improved. But improvement and arrival are not the same things. Resiliency has to become production, and potential has to become consistency. Now, to say all this, if he does regress, doesn't mean he doesn't belong in the NFL. Because after 3 seasons, the question changes. What is he developing into becomes the question then. A franchise quarterback, a capable game manager, a temporary starter, or another talented player that's going to earn that dreaded title of bust. This season should absolutely give us that answer. No more evaluating the flashes, no more living on potential, no more making the circumstances the argument. He don't have to be Superman, but he does have to prove that he can become the solution. Because the starter is not the same as the answer. And this is his put up or shut up year. Now, I want to hear from you. Is Bryce Young a franchise quarterback? Is he still developing into the answer? Or have the Carolina Panthers seen enough to know maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere? Put your answers in the comments and subscribe to FQ Philosophy today for NFL storytelling, analysis, debating, maybe a little disrespect for that trash ass team. Because around here, nobody's safe from the film, nobody's safe from the numbers, nobody's safe from the jokes.
I am what I am, what I'm not, see I never be